Good afternoon. The House will come to order. All those in the chambers and the galleries, please rise, and we'll begin our afternoon today with a prayer by Monsignor Kerwicki.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let us bow our heads and pray. Eternal God of us all, as we live through the remaining hours of this day, may we be humble in spirit, helpful in attitude, faithful in service, and fruitful in all good legislation. Deliver us from worries that wear us out, from resentments that can tear us down, and from frustrations that weaken our morale. Help us to realize that though life may have for us many difficulties and some disagreements, we must not allow difficulties to become too discouraging, nor permit disagreements to make us too disagreeable, and certainly never to allow them to weaken our faith or lower our ideals. Give us all now wisdom and courage to our representatives and those who work diligently with them as they set themselves to solve the problems that confront our show-me state. And the House says, Amen.
Please remain standing and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the approval of the House Journal for the 25th day, Thursday, February 16, 2023.
The gentleman from Jackson has moved for the approval for the House Journal for the 25th day, Thursday, February the 16th, 2023. Are there any additions or subtractions to the journal? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the journal will signify by saying aye, and those opposed no. And the ayes have it. You've approved the journal. Gentleman from Jackson.
Mr. Speaker, next order of business will be introduction of special guests.
Introduction of special guest. Lady from Phelps. Lady from St. Charles, sorry.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. For announcement, please.
Please proceed.
To your left and my right, between the third and fourth column, I have here from Holt High School, DECA champions who are on their way to state in March. They are over 4.0 students. They are the president and vice president of National Honor Society, and their campaign at their DECA competition was for anti-bullying, and today they practiced trying to get their bill handled, which would be Missouri Childhood Hero Act 1087. So if you guys could all give them a round of applause, I think they'd appreciate it.
Gentleman from Pulaski.
Speaker, introduction of special guests.
Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, to my left and your right, between the fourth and fifth columns, I have from my district, Waynesville Mayor Pro Tem Sean Wilson, St. Robert City Alderman Charles Slider, and Walter Reese. They're my constituents. It's an honor to represent them. If the body would please help me give them a warm welcome.
Welcome to the House. Gentleman from New Madrid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Introduction of special guests.
Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, February is a very special month. We've heard that numerous times on the floor. For my family in particular, it shines a light on heart disease. Special guest here with me today is my wife, Amy Brown. She suffers with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. In a few days, we'll have an anniversary of the loss of our daughter, our 18-year-old daughter, who died 5 years ago from hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So I'd ask the House to welcome my wife here today and also continue to support heart disease research.
Gentleman from Jackson,
Introduce special guest, Mr. Speaker.
please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, on your left, my right, between columns 2 and 3, all the way from Raytown, Missouri, we have the city alderman and city alderwoman, Larita Hayden, Ryan Myers, and former state rep Bonet Mims is in the house. Also, the city manager, Damon Hodges, and the mayor from Raytown, which has put in 40 years with the police force, two-time mayor, and soon to be the third-time mayor, Mr. Mike McDonald. But please make them feel welcome.
Welcome to the House. Gentleman from Boone,
Introduction of special guest, Mr. Speaker.
please proceed.
To my right and your left, between the third and fourth column, I'm pleased to introduce the mayor of Columbia. She's a graduate from Mizzou. She was elected mayor in April of 2022. And Mr. Speaker, civil service is in her blood. And she's a strong advocate for livable and sustainable communities. And she brings her energy to solving big problems at the local level. And she works with all community stakeholders. So if the body can put their hands together and welcome her to that Capitol. Thank you very much.
Gentleman from St. Louis County Gray District,
Great. Introducing a special guest.
please proceed.
To your left and my right in the upper gallery, I'd like the body to make them welcome, the city of Blackjack, mayor, and all the aldermen. I'd just like you guys to make them welcome.
Lady from St. Louis County,
Introduction of special guests.
please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to your left and to my right, between the fifth and sixth columns, we have some very special people here who I represent, and also I believe you may represent from the city of Creve Coeur. We have Mayor Bob Hoffman, Joe Martinez from the City Council Ward 4, and Mark Perkins, who is our city manager. I hope the body will give them a warm welcome.
Gentleman from Jackson,
Special introduction, Mr. Speaker.
please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To your left, my right, between the fourth and fifth columns, we have two very special guests with us today. Oftentimes, I talk about how when we come into this body, we are a family, okay, that this institution binds us together forever. Two of our former members have come back to join us today. I'd like to first introduce the gentleman from the former 37th District, Representative Joe Runyons, who is now City Councilman for the City of Grandview, and a very special welcome to my predecessor, the representative from the former 27th District, Representative Bonet Mims, who is now a City Councilwoman for the City of Raytown and Mayor Pro Tem. So again, I would like to ask the House to give them a warm welcome. Welcome our family back home.
Welcome back, representatives. Gentleman from Jackson, Sharp District,
Introduction special guest.
please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the back gallery, we have the mayor of Grandview, Missouri, Mr. Leonard Jones, and other citywide officials from the city of Grandview, Missouri. If you can please make them feel welcome today.
Gentleman from Jefferson,
Mr. Speaker, may I make a special announcement?
you may.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over between the third and fourth column on my left and to your right, I have Brenda King, a constituent of mine from Hillsborough, Missouri, in Jefferson County. Brenda is a Hillsborough City Alderman, longtime Valley Ambulance board member, and she actually does print the quarterly newsletter for the Jefferson County Soil and Water Conservation District. Please join me in giving Brenda a warm welcome.
Gentleman from St. Charles County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Introduction of special guests.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today on your left, my left, your right, between the second and third columns, I'd like to introduce a couple of gentlemen. First of all is the mayor of the great city of O'Fallon, Bill Hennessy, and along with him is the city administrator from the great city of O'Fallon, Mike Stoughton. Could you please welcome them to the House?
Welcome to the House, gentlemen. Gentleman from Butler.
Mr. Speaker, to introduce special guests.
Please proceed.
On my left and your right, between the fort and the pillar post, Drake Senator Doug Aubrey from Poplar Bluff, and Herman Shaw. We would help make him feel welcome.
Further introductions. Gentleman from Jefferson.
Mr. Speaker, to your right and to my left, from between the fourth and the fifth column, or third and fourth column, I should say, we have a gentleman from Crystal City, which is out of my area, but still in Jefferson County. The gentleman, Kenny Waller, is sick today, but I wanted to introduce Tony Becker. Tony Becker is a councilman from Crystal City, Missouri, and also is one of the team that is bringing $1 billion investment to the state of Missouri, if we can get it all done. Tony Becker, Mr. Speaker, please give him a warm round of applause.
Please proceed again.
Mr. Speaker, to your right and my left, between the fourth and fifth column, I have Tammy Fulbright. She is the committee woman for my district. And Jason Fulbright, also the committee man for my district. Jason is also the city councilman for the city of Arnold. His wife, Tammy Fulbright, is a financial guru for Bi-State and Metrolink in St. Louis. Please make them welcome.
Further introduction. Seeing none, gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next order of business will be points of personal privilege. I ask you to recognize the lady from St. Louis, District 85, for a point of personal privilege.
Lady from St. Louis.
Point of action. I'm new at this. All right. Albert A. Walton was born February 21st, 1942, in St. Louis, Missouri. He attended Carl and Henry Elementary School, graduating from Henry at the top of the class in January 1956. He spent his first 3 years at Beaumont High School, where he ran track and cross country. He transferred to Sumner High School in his senior year and graduated in January in 1960. In 1959, while he was still in high school, he joined the U.S. Navy Reserves and trained as a storekeeper, reaching the rank of seaman before being honorable discharged in 1961. A year after graduation from high school, Walton entered Harris Stowe College in St. Louis, Missouri in the fall of 1961. At Harris, he ran track, cross country, and was president of the freshman class. Walton was the junior college division, majoring in commerce and finance and received an Associate of Arts degree in June of 1963. At Harris, Walton pledged Omega Psi Phi fraternity through Omicron Sigma chapter. He entered LAMSA's Pledge Club as first semester freshman in the fall of 1961, where he served as club president. He was initiated into the fraternity as a second semester freshman on April 21st, 1962. Walton served as chapter Baslan for 2 years. Upon graduation from college, Walton joined the Asama Omega graduating chapter in St. Louis. Walton was elected to the position of Omega 8 district counselor off in over 20 years and served about 8 terms. He was elected to 2 terms as Grand Counselor of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. He was a lifetime membership in the fraternity. After graduating from Harris, Walton received a bachelor's degree in business administration from UMSL. In May 1968, a master's degree in business administration from Washington University in May 1970, and a Juris Doctor's degree from St. Louis University in May 1970. He was active with the Black Student Organization at all three of those universities and vice chairperson of Association of Black Collegians. Walton's employment career prior to practicing law includes a county manager, St. Louis Airport Comptroller, Homer Phillips Hospital, financial analysis, constituent, oil, accounting instruction, Florissant Valley Community College, accounting and law instruction. UMSL, assistant professor of management. Alabama State University. Before retirement, Walton had a private practice of law for 43 years. He was admitted to the Master Bar and the Federal Bar, including the U.S. Supreme Court. Walton was elected to 7 terms as a member of the Missouri House of Representatives, thus served in this body for 14 years. He was elected Democratic committeeman for the Halls Ferry Township in St. Louis County. His ex-wife, Juanita Head Walton, served 1 term of St. Louis Board and 4 terms in the Missouri House and 2 terms as the Democratic committeewoman in the Ferguson Township. His daughter, Rochelle, served 4 terms in the Missouri House and 1 term as a member of the St. Louis County Council. And in her 2nd term as Democratic committeewoman in the Ferguson Township. Walton has 2 son-in-laws, Representative Alan Gray and Representative Jay Mosley, and they're both in their last term as members of the Missouri House. His daughter, Angela Walton Mosley, is in her 1st term as Missouri State Senate, serving continuously with her husband, Jay. Walton is chairman of the Unified Democratic Township Organization, aka Unity PAC, which has successfully elected some 100 people to office of St. Louis County. Walton has had membership numerous civic, political, social service organizations. He served as national vice president of the National Association of Black Accountants at this time. Walton is divorced and has 5 children, Rochelle, Rhonda, Angela, Elbert Walton III, and Jonathan. His son, Jonathan, who is now a major in the Armed National Guard Reserve, followed him into the membership in Omega Psi Phi fraternity. His daughter, Rhonda, rest her soul in peace, followed him into the MBA program at Washington University, where she received a joint MBA and a master's in engineering management. He has 12 grandchildren and 8 grandchildren. So I'm letting you all know today is his birthday. Can you all tell Elbert Walton, 81st birthday. Tell him happy birthday.
Happy 81st birthday. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Staying on points of personal privilege, I ask you to recognize the lady from Jackson, District 35, for a point of personal privilege.
Lady from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Point of personal privilege.
Please proceed.
Last Thursday morning, Lee Summit lost a teacher, mother, coach, and friend. Rachel Stone taught physical education and health at Lee Summit High School and worked in the district for 23 years. Mrs. Stone was also a dance and volleyball coach for Lee Summit High School. She ran social media for Summit Lanes Bowling Alley, and she was a member of Open Range Fellowship Church. She was on her way to work Thursday morning when she was tragically killed in a car crash when a semi-driver lost control on an icy patch of 50 highway and crossed the median into oncoming traffic directly into her path. Mrs. Stone leaves behind 2 children, a husband, and countless students and friends who will miss her deeply. Mr. Speaker, I ask that we give a moment of silence for Mrs. Rachel Stone in honor of the legacy that she leaves behind.
Would the House and the galleries please stand and offer a moment of silence to Ms. Stone. Thank you. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next order of business will be first reading of House bills and joint resolutions.
Mr. Clerk, would you please read the House bills and House joint resolutions?
House Bill number 1189, introduced by Griffith, an act relating to the authority to confer degrees at public institutions of higher education. House Bill number 1190, introduced by Bosley, an act relating to doula services. And House Bill number 1191, introduced by Bosley, an act relating to health insurance coverage for childbirth education.
Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next order of business will be House bills for third reading, and I ask you to recognize the gentleman from Clay for a motion on House Committee substitute for House Bill 640 and 729.
Gentleman from Clay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that House Committee sub for House Bill 729 and 640 be third read and passed.
The gentleman from Clay has moved for the third reading and passage of House Committee substitute to House Bill 640 and 729. Gentleman from Clay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to refresh the body's memory, we perfected this bill last Tuesday. It came out of committee. It was unanimous. The bill, just very, very briefly, what it does.
The gentleman from Clay, are you renewing your motion to adopt the House Committee substitute, the House bill? I apologize, gentlemen. This is third read. Let me restate that. The gentleman from Clay has moved for the third reading and passage of House Committee substitute House Bill 640 and 729. My fault there.
All right. Okay, so, Mr. Speaker, to continue, to refresh the body's memory just very, very briefly, this bill is reworking the statute in Chapter 84. We are lifting the salary caps for the Kansas City Police Department from the chief on down to entry-level officers within the Kansas City Police Department, and we are also removing an age restriction for the chief that was set at 60. Basically what we are doing then is we're transferring this power to the Kansas City Police Board of Commissioners. They will set the salary schedule. The hope with that is that they will set a compensation package that will give all officers up and down the line a pay increase and hopefully a very, very competitive salary schedule that will help with retention and recruitment for the Kansas City Police Department. Mr. Speaker, now, if there are no questions, I do renew my motion.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speak on the bill.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The bill handler and I presented this bill together in committee a few weeks ago, back in January now. This is a bill that did come out of committee unanimous. Also, you may remember the mayor of Kansas City, Mr. Quentin Lucas, came down to visit the Capitol that week. This is one of the city of Kansas City's priorities and a priority for the mayor's office and for the Chamber of Commerce in Kansas City. So I would ask that the body would support this bill and go ahead and get it passed through. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion. Lady from St. Louis. Oh. Further discussion. Seeing none, gentleman from Clay, you're recognized close.
Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
The gentleman from Clay has renewed his motion for the third reading and passage of House Committee substitute to House Bill 640 and 729. All those in favor will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no. Mr. Clerk, please ring the bell and open the board. I think it's not working. We will pause for the moment while we remedy the situation. The bell is open. Please vote. Gentleman from Howell, if you're in the chamber, you're required to vote. Ladies and gentlemen, the board will lay open for the moment. We're waiting for the programmer to come up and close the board so we do it the right way. Nothing like new technology. Has everybody voted? Has everybody voted? Mr. Clerk, please close the board and tally the vote. By your vote of 151 yea, 3 nay, and 3 present, you have passed in third read House Committee Substitute House Bills 640 and 729. There is an emergency clause. Gentleman from Clay.
Mr. Speaker, I move for the adoption of the emergency clause to House Committee Sub House Bill 729, 640.
The gentleman from Clay has moved for the adoption of the emergency clause to House Committee Substitute House Bills 640 and 729. Gentleman from Clay.
Mr. Speaker, in the justification for the emergency clause, I think everyone in this chamber would generally agree we have had skyrocketing crime. If you look at our two flagship cities in the state of Missouri, if you look at St. Louis, you look at Kansas City, it seems like, unfortunately, every year we are hitting all-time highs. I know in Kansas City last year we had close to 170 homicides. It was the second highest homicide total that we have had in Kansas City in the city's history. I would generally think, and I would hope, that every member of this legislative body on the floor today would believe, as does the governor, I believe, that crime has hit a crisis point in the state of Missouri. And again, like I have said, I've said this before, this bill is not going to solve crime problems in Kansas City. I mean, it's not going to do that. But the bottom line is, though, that every piece helps. I currently am on the committee, Crime Prevention and Public, Crime Prevention and Public Safety, and we have had witness after witness come in from areas, around the state, and consistently they talk about the need for a better compensation package for law enforcement. And the bottom line is, it's just unfortunately today, it is just an economic necessity. And in particular in the Kansas City area, because we have so many municipalities around Kansas City, officers are in short supply. I think I am fairly accurate in saying that currently, right now in Kansas City, we are nearly 250 officers short. So the bottom line is that this bill, all it does is, hopefully the intent of the bill is to try to get a better compensation package done by the Police Board of Commissioners in Kansas City to help with retention and recruitment. And the bottom line is that we are in a crisis point for crime in Missouri. Everything helps, so that is what this bill is attempting to do. So, Mr. Speaker, am I good? Okay, with that, I renew my motion.
The gentleman from Clay. Further discussion on the emergency clause. Gentleman from Boone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To inquire of the bill handler.
Does the bill handler yield?
I do.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
Not doing too bad. I just wanted to ask you, how does this emergency clause, is it necessary for the immediate preservation of public peace, health, and safety as required by the Constitution?
I absolutely believe that it is. At the rate, for example, Kansas City Police are going, the attrition rate is horrible. Anything that we can do, any piece of the puzzle that we can do. And the bottom line is, sir, let me just tell you this. There's a saying, and you have probably heard it, that when there's a disaster or when there's a crisis of any sort, the saying is this: look for the helpers. Look for the people that are helping. And the bottom line is, today, right now, the individuals in this chamber, we're the helpers. I'm asking for your help. I'm asking you for your vote, and this is a vote for public safety. So, yes, sir, I do believe it's a crisis, and this emergency clause is absolutely needed.
Thank you for that, sir. And would this emergency clause apply to the entire bill or just a portion of it?
Generally, the entire bill. Yeah, the entire bill.
All right, thank you, sir. I believe that I will be supporting this emergency clause, and I would suggest that the rest of the body do so as well. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion. Lady from Jackson.
Platt.
Lady from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to speak on the emergency clause.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Recently, in my neighborhood, on the same route that I take to Jefferson City, one of our police officers in Kansas City was killed in a tragic car accident. The car that hit him was at an intersection. The officer was coming through the intersection on a green light. The car that hit him ran the red light. They estimated that he hit the police vehicle at about 80 miles an hour, and he was applying his brakes. The officer's dog, Champ, was killed immediately. And a pedestrian who was on the corner was also killed when the police car flipped over and landed on him. I think when we consider what we're doing here, we need to think about how that kind of incident and loss impacts the whole community, but especially the other officers on the police force. And it would be somewhat tone deaf of us, I think, to not acknowledge the danger that our officers are in. And while this may have not been associated with the officer responding to a crime, it doesn't matter. They're out there and they're at risk. And we owe it to them to provide them with a recognition of what they face. I got up and spoke on the bill earlier this week, and I still stand by what I said. It would be much more preferable if we could do these things locally with local control. But given that this is where we're at, it is imperative that we support those people who put their lives on the line to provide us with a sense of security. And so I will be supporting this emergency clause. Thank you, gentlemen, for bringing it forward. And I urge the body to do the same. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion on the emergency clause. Lady from Platte.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To speak on the emergency clause.
Please proceed.
I think I am one of the few members of this body who has experience in human resources. There are a lot of lawyers, a lot of social workers, but I do not believe that there are very many who have direct experience in human resources. I worked through I was in human resources in the last 3 years in the financial sector and was a member of that industry through what is called the Great Resignation. There were times when we had more requisitions than we had applicants. There were times when we were scarfing for applicants. A lot of that was due to changes that we needed to make to meet the market demand for employment at that time. I believe that this emergency clause will allow us to give the Kansas City Police Department the tools and resources they need to recruit and retain officers in a time of need. I do not believe that we should wait 6 months or more to enact this so that they can get started doing what should have been done before now. So let's give them those tools, let's give them those resources today. And with that, I will be supporting this emergency clause, and I would ask the body to do the same. Thank you.
Further discussion. Lady from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To comment?
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, this is a hill that I will die on. Mr. Speaker, as a veteran, I understand the danger of the job. So my respects out to the fallen officer. But Mr. Speaker, public safety is not more cops. Public safety is maybe finally funding after-school programs so that these children who are rampantly running the streets have something to do, because most of them are poor and they cannot afford the programs that are out there. Mr. Speaker, public safety is making sure everybody has access to fair and equal education so that they can have a job, so they're not forced to go out and commit crimes. Public safety is compassion for people. Public safety, and maybe we'd have more cops if, there wasn't those little bans like tattoos and hair and not hiring people because of the way that they look. Maybe that'll get us some more cops. I just don't think that this is the biggest tool that we could be using with the resources that we have, Mr. Speaker. So I will always be against this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion on the emergency clause? Seeing none, gentlemen, you're recognized to close.
Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
The gentleman from Clay has renewed his motion for the emergency clause. This is adoption for House Committee substitute to House Bill 640 and 729. All those in favor will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no. Mr. Clerk, please ring the bell and open the board. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask you to recognize the lady from Jackson, District 35, for a special introduction.
Lady from Jackson.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, special introduction of guests.
Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, to your right and my left, between the fourth and the fifth pillar, I am very pleased to introduce the Mayor of Lee Summit, Bill Baird, City Council people, Fred DeMauro and Mia Pryor, and City Manager Mark Dunning. Please make them feel welcome.
Welcome to the House. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask you to recognize the lady from St. Louis County, District 70, for a special announcement.
Lady from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 60 years ago today, a special distinguished state representative was born. I've had the pleasure of serving with her for our 7th year, and many of you are enjoying serving with her right now. So I'd like to ask the body to celebrate with me on the representative from the Barron-George District's 60th birthday.
Happy birthday, lady. Has everybody voted? Mr. Clerk, please close the board and tally the vote. By your vote of 137 yes, 15 nay, and 5 present, you have adopted the emergency clause. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next order of business will be House Bills for Perfection, and I ask you to recognize the gentleman from St. Francis for a motion on House Committee substitute for House Bill 417.
Gentleman from St. Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that House Bill 417 be perfected and printed.
The gentleman from St. Francis has moved for the perfection and printing of House Bill 417. Gentleman from St. Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the title of House Bill 417 be agreed to.
The gentleman from St. Francis has moved for the adoption of House Committee substitute to House Bill 417. Gentleman from St. Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill is the Upskills Credential Bill.
Gentlemen, you want to adopt that title?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
The gentleman from St. Francis has moved for the adoption of the title. The gentleman from St. Francis has renewed his motion for the adoption of House Committee substitute to House Bill 417. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. You've adopted House Committee substitute to House Bill 417. Gentleman from St. Francis, you renew your motion?
I renew my motion.
The gentleman from St. Francis has renewed his motion for the adoption of the title. Further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of adopting the title for House Committee substitute to House Bill 417 will signify by saying aye. And those opposed, no. And the ayes have it. You've adopted the title. Gentleman from St. Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 417 is the Upskills Credential Bill. It's a grant program that's subject to appropriation, so it is not a tax credit in any way. Unemployment in Missouri is at a historic low rate right now, and this program allows businesses to do something I think is vitally important right now, and that is to grow their own workers. Right now, businesses will have workers who are very good at what they do. They come to work every day. They are a good cultural fit for the business, yet sometimes they don't have the skills necessary for the job that the employer needs. So this bill would allow them to keep these workers and upskill these workers. What happens as a result of this? The workers get higher pay, the companies get better workers, and as a result, I think the economy of the state of Missouri works better, and it's better for everybody involved. The program runs through the Department of Economic Development, and you can get up, each employee can get up to $2,000 to upskill. Each employer can get no more than $30,000 to do this. It is broken down into 3 sections. One section is for employers 1 to 50. One is for employers 51 to 200, and another one for those over 200. The idea is we want to make sure the mom and pop shops get a chance to upskill their workers just like the large corporations, to try to grow their own workers that can make their business more successful. The Department of Economic Development will use 3 criteria. One of the things they're going to look at is, does it increase the wages of the employee? I think that's a good thing. Second, is that area in economic distress? So is these employees needed in that area to try to bring back vibrant businesses to it? And third, what is the contribution that the employer is going to make towards this upskilling credentials? Those are some of the criteria they will make. The bill, right now we're historic low on unemployment, so it has a 6-year sunset, knowing that at some point maybe unemployment rises. We hope not, but we know it may at some point, and we may no longer need this to try to get these employees that are vital to our businesses. But right now I think this is a good way to let businesses grow their own workers, workers that are cultural fit, workers that are proven to the employer that just need upskill. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I'll entertain any questions.
Further questions? Lady from St. Louis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to speak in favor of the bill.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the gentleman for bringing the bill forward. It's a great bill, in addition to which we made a few small changes in committee that made the bill, in my opinion, better, which allows for individuals who work in public hospitals, for example, to be able to take advantage of this. For example, if they're an LPN or something to that effect, they can take advantage of this where we need them the most in places such as state-run mental facilities and hospitals in rural areas in particular. With that, it's a pretty simple bill other than that, and I would urge the body's support. Thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing gentleman from Green.
Inquire the bill sponsor.
Does the bill sponsor yield?
I
Do you
do.
have a clear path?
I do. Yes. Gentlemen, as I looked at this and I started thinking about what it's doing, obviously the idea here is to raise people's wages.
It is, and to also give the employers the workers they vitally need.
And by doing so, and I don't know if you've been able to quantify this or not, but won't we then probably also lifting people out of other programs, so there's some cost savings in other programs because we're raising people's income?
I could see we have, say, a single mother or a single father, some of these people who are working in these number of children who are on state assistance right now, we may be able to bring them up to a wage where that would no longer be needed. I think that's what you're talking about.
And where your program is a one-time investment, if we get people off these programs, that's an ongoing savings.
That could be for the next 20, 30 years of their life.
So really, it might more than pay for itself.
I could see that happening.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Further discussion? Lady from St. Louis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To speak briefly on the bill.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill also came through Rules Legislative Oversight, and I just want to say that it came out unanimously. This is a good bill, and I support it. Thank you.
Further discussion on the bill? Seeing none, gentleman from St. Francis, you're recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
The gentleman from St. Francis has renewed his motion for the perfection and printing of House Committee Substitute to House Bill has renewed his motion for the adoption of the substitute, the House Committee Substitute to House Bill 417. All those in favor will signify by saying aye, and those opposed no. And the ayes have it. You've adopted the House Committee Substitute to House Bill 417. Gentleman from St. Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion for the perfection.
The gentleman from St. Francis has renewed his motion for the perfection and printing of House Committee Substitute to House Bill 417. All those in favor will signify by saying aye, and those opposed no. And the ayes have it. You have perfected and printed House Committee Substitute to House Bill 417. Gentleman from Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The next order of business will be announcements.
Announcements. Seeing none, gentleman from Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members should be prepared to perfect House Bill 415, House Committee Substitute for House Bill 268, House Committee Substitute for House Bill 186, House Committee Substitute for House Bills 994, 52, and 984. With no further business before this body, I move that the House stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023.
The gentleman from Scott has moved that the House stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Wednesday, February the 22nd, 2023. All those in favor will signify by saying aye, and those opposed no. And the ayes have it. The House stands adjourned.